Laurie Anderson is an artist whose work defies any easy description. She's a pioneer of the avant-garde, but as we learned, that doesn't begin to describe what she creates. Her work isn't sold in galleries, it's experienced by audiences who come to see her perform, singing, telling stories, and playing strange violins of her own invention. She won a Grammy for a chamber music album about Hurricane Sandy and remains one of America's most unusual and visionary artists. We met at her largest ever U.S. exhibition at the Smithsonian's Hirshhorn Museum earlier this year. Ladies and gentlemen, Laurie Anderson.
The story will continue in a moment.
She's played electronic drums on her body and electric violins that sing and howl. For nearly 5 decades now, she's blended the beautiful and the bizarre.
Days go by.
Challenging audiences with homilies and humor.
Welcome to Difficult Listening Hour.
This is the picture.
She blurs boundaries across music, theater, dance, and film.
Oh, yeah. Strange dream. This is my dream body.
It's not just audiences that have a hard time defining her work. Laurie Anderson sometimes does as well.
I used to say multimedia artist, and that was ridiculous. Yeah. It sounds multimedia artist. It's so clumsy. With a gun to my head, I say, I tell stories. And those look like paintings sometimes. They look like, songs. They look like films. They're just stories. What is a story? What is its function? How does it work? Who's telling it? To who?
Oh, Superman.
If you've heard of Laurie Anderson at all, it may be because of this 8-minute-long song she recorded back in 1980. It's eerie and somewhat unsettling, and to her surprise, it became a hit.
This was a song about how basically technology cannot save you.
I first heard it when I was 14. I just was like, what is this? And I still listen to it.
It's about a lot of things. Justice, safety, power.
There's always force.
She recorded Oh Superman herself in her apartment in downtown Manhattan.
I had a lot of equipment that would loop things. So I was making a lot of vocal loops. Actually, you have to hit it right at the right spot. So they hawk it and do this. Blah, blah, blah.
This is the hand.
You say, because when love is gone, there's always justice.
Here you go. You can use a vocoder. Here we go. Go ahead.
And when justice is gone, there is always force. And when force is gone, there's always Mom. Hi, Mom. I love that.
You do that very well.
I've been listening
you got
to
the
it
job.
The song led to her groundbreaking first album, Big Science.
Well, you don't know me.
Pitchfork said, listening to Laurie Anderson's first album is like sitting down with a strange form of life that has been studying us for a long time.
I'd like to meet that writer. I mean, everything is when you actually break it down, bizarre and unlikely. That's my lens, I think. Unlikely.
Laurie Anderson grew up in Glen Ellen, Illinois, where she was one of 8 children. Every weekend, she played violin with the Chicago Youth Symphony and then walked across the street to the Art Institute to study painting.
And it didn't seem different to me to go like this or go like this.
It was the same thing.
Same thing. I would just, is that, or is that? Is it
Playing the violin or painting was...
colorful enough? Is it cool enough? Is it adventurous enough? Is it right enough? Is it, it's just the same exact thing, all the same questions. And it was just what a hand is doing and what it's making sound over here, it's making color over here.
She came to New York in 1966 and began experimenting with music and short films. But after a while, she thought her work might be better received in Europe.
You wanted to tour in Europe.
I did, yeah. I wrote to about maybe 500, let's say, art centers, saying, planning a tour in the fall. I had no tour. And would you like to be part of that?
With a couple responses, she took off for Italy. That's her in 1975, playing a violin with a tape recorder inside, playing loops so she could duet with herself.
But then when is the concert over? There's no end to a loop. So I thought I need a timing mechanism. So I wore some ice skates with their blades frozen into blocks of ice. So when I'd play until the ice started melting and cracking, and then when I began to lose my balance, I would just stop. That was it. That was the clock.
And you were doing this on the street?
Yeah. Usually in the hottest part of town, because it could take a long time to have these things, the cubes melt.
For years, she was a traveling troubadour, experimenting with sound, light, and stories.
But I've been around the block, but I don't care. I'm on a roll, I'm on a wild ride.
After the unlikely success of Oh Superman, she got an 8-record deal with Warner Brothers.
I've got a beautiful red dress.
Suddenly, the avant-garde artist was playing on MTV. That must have been strange, to have that kind of commercial success dangled before you.
I knew enough about the pop world to know it was extremely fickle. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be tricked by this.
A chance meeting with a rock and roll legend she'd vaguely heard of changed her life. His name was Lou Reed, and he asked her out.
And we went over to the AES convention at the Javits Center. Super geeky thing to do. We were looking at tube microphones.
So for your first date, you went to the Acoustical Society Engineering Convention. It doesn't sound very romantic.
I didn't think of it as romantic.
You didn't know it was a date?
No, I did not. He said, let's go get a coffee. I said, okay. And I was like, I kind of like this guy. We weren't really apart for 21 years after that.
Wow.
Yeah. He's my best friend.
Sometimes you'd better hang on to your emotion. Hang on to your emotion.
They shared Buddhism, Tai Chi, and boundless creativity, and finally got married in 2008. 5 years later, Lou Reed died after a long battle with liver cancer. You wrote about his death. I've never seen an expression as full of wonder as Lou's as he died. He wasn't afraid. I'd gotten to walk with him to the end of the world. Life, so beautiful, painful, and dazzling, does not get better than that.
Yeah, Lou was a person who had thought about this and had prepared himself for it and was 100% there.
Laurie Anderson still lives in the apartment they shared in the West Village, and every day walks her dog, Little Will, to the studio she's had since the 1970s. When we dropped in on her, she was rehearsing with cellist Ruben Codelli.
And you played...
Right. It's an opera she wrote about Amelia Earhart's doomed attempt to circumnavigate the globe.
She's on this crackly radio, and she's going like, I can see you, but I can't hear you. And they're going, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
She's in perpetual motion, playing with technology and images, fascinated by language and sound.
What was really fun about this,
She's working with an Australian university on an artificial intelligence program loaded with everything she's ever written, said, or sung. You can ask it a question or give it a photograph, and the algorithm creates an original poem in the words and speech pattern of Laurie Anderson.
Half of it is really terrible poetry, a quarter of it's kind of interesting, and a quarter of it is really kind of great.
To see how it works, we uploaded a photograph of my newborn son, Sebastian.
Wow. The mouth, the eye, the hand, the face. There's nowhere to go, no place to hide it. It's everywhere. Now that I'm here, I can't believe it's me. Who did this? Who are these people? Why are you here?
I'm like crying. I find this really emotional.
The thing is, it really shows us more that how much of ourselves we put into language. Yeah. There's a story in an ancient play.
Last year, Anderson delivered 6 virtual lectures as the Norden Professor of Poetry at Harvard.
You know, the best way to see the city is at night from the air.
Following in the footsteps of Robert Frost, Leonard Bernstein, and Toni Morrison. Not surprisingly, Anderson's lectures were very different.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, you're in the conga room.
Perhaps the closest anyone can get inside Laurie Anderson's mind is this virtual reality world she created with a collaborator in Taiwan.
It's a world that looks spatial, but it's made of words and drawings.
Whoa.
It feels as though you're flying inside a work of art.
You've been working with technology for 40 years now. Does it still fascinate you?
Yeah, it does. I'm still a geek. You know? I like it. I don't think I worship it.
It's not the savior that
no.
some hope.
No. And this was said to me by a cryptologist. If you think technology is going to solve your problems, you don't understand technology and you don't understand your problems. And I like that very much because people just go, oh yeah, that's going to fix it. Really?
Laurie Anderson's largest ever U.S. exhibition is currently on display at the Smithsonian's Hirshhorn Museum on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It's an odyssey through her singular creative life.
This seems very ominous to me.
Good. There's so much flag waving these days, and it becomes quite mechanical in some ways. And I guess I'm terrified of the rise of fascism around the world, frankly.
Wow.
In one room, she's painted words and images that seem to explode onto the walls and floor. It's a kind of multi-dimensional sketchbook of her thoughts, dreams, and stories.
Did you map this out before you did it?
No, I should have.
New ideas are built on older works. She first came up with this concept in the 1970s.
This is called Citizens.
I've never seen anything like this.
Miniature clay figures with video of people projected onto them.
And they all, I feel like, want to kill me.
This one
They're all
does,
sharpening knives.
because I think it's like, people like elves, right? And fairies.
Yeah.
So I think that's for me is the fascination of.
These are some badass fairies. I mean.
From miniatures to monuments.
We didn't see the sun, we didn't see the fresh air for weeks.
In another room, another story. This one told by a giant video projection of Muhammad El-Garani, held for 7 years in Guantanamo as a teenager without charge until a judge released him.
For me, I gave this person a megaphone to say, it's your turn, what do you have to say? This is not about my opinions of what happened here. This is Muhammad El-Garani's story.
Laurie Anderson is 74 now and still conjuring up new stories and new ways to tell them.
I'm not an artist to make the world a better place. This is not my goal, at all, except like secretly.
Just very quietly, that's your goal?
Quietly, because I really love beautiful things, because it's thrilling to put your mind somewhere else and be somewhere that you could never have imagined, and then suddenly you're imagining, and then you're there. It's magic.